Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. Wow, what a divisive superhero movie that turned out to be. Despite the fact that this spectacle of a movie sees the coming of both Superman and Batman on screen together for the first time since their creation in the 30s, quite possibly two of the biggest superheroes ever, you would think that fans would be rejoicing, but nope, it was all-out war. A battle between those who loved it and those who despised it. Those who didn't like the movie felt that it was too dark and miserable and too convoluted and just was generally a downright mess. And those who loved it felt that it was a new and brave direction to take, with each opposing side being sure that their opinion is the correct opinion, all other views be damned. Batman v Superman? Yeah, this was more like fans v fans. So yes, released in 2016, this sequel to Man of Steel sees Batman, played by Ben Affleck, thrown into the mix, where he wants to destroy Superman, played again by Henry Cavill, as he sees him as a danger to humanity. Meanwhile, some kid pretending to be Lex Luthor is up to his own evil schemes, which all builds up to both an epic battle between two superheroes and the destructive force known as Doomsday. So now that several years have passed and the dust has settled, so to speak, let's take a constructive look at Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. And let's just hope it doesn't turn into Dawn of comment section chaos by looking into 10 things that you didn't know about this movie. So let's explore this movie that shows that two foes can become friends thanks to the word Martha. Let's check it out. Number 10, a new era of Batman. So in 2013, the same year that Man of Steel came out, Warner Bros. Was already getting to work on a follow-up movie, which was to be spearheaded by Zack Snyder, David S. Goyer, with Christopher Nolan as a creative consultant, all of whom were the main creative forces behind Man of Steel. While brainstorming ideas, the discussion was on as to who Superman can face next. Who could be his next opponent? And who could possibly be a greater threat than General Zod, a Kryptonian equal to Superman's powers? Where Snyder himself brought up Batman. Batman could turn up to face off against Superman. Now that would be a memorable opponent, and something that had never been done on film before. In addition to that, a Batman vs Superman movie had actually been in the pipeline at Warner Bros. Ever since the 2000s. At that time, the Batman that was on everyone's minds was Christian Bale's Batman from the Dark Knight trilogy, as they were the recent iteration of Batman. And it was considered to set this movie in the Dark Knight universe, and to have Cavill's Superman come face to face with Bale's Batman. But the idea was scrapped, as the third entry in the Dark Knight trilogy ends pretty conclusively. Bruce Wayne has now moved on, and John Blake took over the Batman mantle. The powers that be behind Batman v Superman felt that it would be weird having Superman meet a Batman that wasn't Bruce Wayne, aka John Blake. So it was decided that just like Superman in the previous movie, Batman will be rebooted. But I don't know, I can remember there were whispers at the time that the Batman character was rebooted because Christian Bale was offered to reprise the role, but he turned it down. Did anyone else hear that? Number 9, as the script developed, it was no longer a sequel. Scriptwriter and director Chris Terrio was hired to do a rewrite to the script, as David S. Goyer was no longer available. He was fascinated with the concept that Batman is Pluto, god of the underworld, and that Superman is Apollo, god of the sky, and thus their conflict would be inevitable due to their very existence. Along the way, the movie became less and less a sequel to Man of Steel per se, but more of an extension of the universe established in that film. Forbes described it as a, quote, backdoor pilot for a Justice League movie or an eventual standalone Batman movie. Even Henry Cavill stated that Batman v Superman isn't a Man of Steel sequel, but entirely its own thing. In fact, Superman only has 42 lines of dialogue in the entire movie. I guess the pressure was on to kickstart a cinematic universe with other characters, rather than just making another Superman movie, due to the popularity of the MCU at the time. So given that the movie was an extension of Man of Steel and not being Man of Steel 2, what to call it? Well, the title Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice apparently came from studio executives. Yeah, because they're known for their creativity. And other potential titles include Son of Sun and Night of Night. Wow, what a terrible title. As well as Justice League Rising and Justice League Foundations. Zack Snyder apparently wanted the verses in the title to just be cut down to a single V, as he didn't want the movie to just come across as another versus movie. Hence the title wasn't Batman vs Superman, but Batman v Superman. Number 8. Characters coming and going. Several characters previously seen in Man of Steel return for Batman v Superman, including Henry Cavill as Superman, of course, as well as Amy Adams as Lois Lane, Lawrence Fishburne as Perry White, Diane Lane as Martha Kent, and a cameo by Kevin Costner as Jonathan Kent. There were, however, more characters from the Batman mythos that were going to appear in the movie but were dropped. These include the Joker and the Riddler. Some characters even had potential castings until they were dropped, such as Dick Grayson / Nightwing, with Adam Driver being sought after to play the part, as well as Carla Gugino being sought after to play Catwoman. But of course, both characters were dropped. Apparently, that journalist that we see get killed at the start of the movie was Jimmy Olsen, and he was played by Michael Cassidy. Yep, one of the most celebrated characters in the Superman mythos is killed just as he's introduced. I don't know if this is really brave or really disrespectful to the character. I guess Zack Snyder really does not like Jimmy Olsen. One character who did make a glorious debut in Batman v Superman was Wonder Woman, with this making the character's first cinematic appearance. Trying to get Wonder Woman on the big screen is something that Warner Bros. Had been trying to do since the mid-90s, which along the way would see a failed TV pilot and the abandoned George Miller Justice League movie from the 2000s. And yes, I would say that Wonder Woman was a nice addition to the movie, and her character is definitely a highlight. She's pretty hot too. Number 7. The casting of Batman. So with this now being a new iteration of Batman, the search was on for a new Batman. Several actors were considered, including Josh Brolin, Ryan Gosling, Richard Armitage, and Joe Manganiello. Snyder really pursued Ben Affleck for the part, and originally he really didn't want to do it, but Snyder convinced him by explaining that this is an older, more seasoned Batman, one who has lived a life of great trauma over the years, one that has become a damaged, brutal machine. The announcement of Affleck as Batman was extremely controversial at the time, almost reflecting the casting of Michael Keaton in the role. People were like, seriously? Ben Affleck's Batman? Ben Affleck? Come on! I guess maybe it's because Affleck had previously played Daredevil, which was considered a failed superhero movie, but after the movie's release, I think everyone pretty much agreed that Affleck's Batman was great and a highlight of the movie. And here is fellow Australian YouTuber Cosplay Chris to give his insights into Ben Affleck's Batman. Give it away, Chris. Sorry, this way.
Hey everyone, Minty, thank you very much for having me on for this little segment. Now, Batman v Superman, is it a perfect movie? God no, far from it, but it does have some little gems sprinkled throughout. If you are going to watch BVS, I highly recommend watching the extended edition. It definitely does explain a few more things, and the narrative definitely makes a bit more sense, but one of those gems within BVS, for me, is Ben Affleck's Batman. When he was initially cast as Batman back in 2013, I was all for it. I didn't think about it at the time that he would make a good Batman, but upon the announcement, I thought, That makes sense. And what I love about his Batman, he is severely flawed. We all know Batman is a severely damaged and flawed character, but I feel Affleck really captures that essence of being a broken man trying to do good. Not to mention, I think his Batsuit in BVS is one of the most perfect representations of Batman on screen. It is the perfect look to The Dark Knight for me anyway, especially with the notion of it looking like Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns suit. He's an absolute tank in that Batsuit. Standing at 6'3" in the Batsuit, you're looking at about 6'4". But not only him as Batman, his characterization of Bruce Wayne, again, a severely damaged man. In the extended edition, we see him wake up from a nightmare. He then grabs some pills and downs them with some red wine first thing in the morning. To me, that is a good representation of Bruce Wayne. The Bruce Wayne we see behind the scenes, not the Bruce Wayne facade of being the playboy, which Affleck does indeed play, but just seeing what goes on behind that dark curtain. And the fact that they were able to get Affleck to turn his head in his BVS cowl is absolutely brilliant. It's a brilliant piece of costuming technology. The whole suit is a beautiful representation of what you can do with some very skilled artisans. Thanks again for having me on board, Minty. Guys, enjoy the rest of the video.
Number 6. A galaxy of stars and characters. So just as this movie was to introduce a new Batman, it was to also introduce a new Lex Luthor, Superman's ultimate foe. Jesse Eisenberg was cast in the part. And yeah, I really don't like this version of Lex. I feel like Eisenberg played him like a nerdy, socially awkward, eccentric teenager on a sugar high. It's like he saw Jim Carrey's performance as Edward Nygma and was like, yep, that's the direction to go in. But to me, Luthor should have a forceful presence, full of command, confidence, power, and intellect. He's not a zany, crazy, wacky guy. So this just felt wrong. And above all, I kind of found him really irritating. Snyder said that the casting of Eisenberg as Luthor would take the character to unexpected directions. And if those unexpected directions were to be really bad and nothing like the comics, then I guess they succeeded. Jeremy Irons was cast as Alfred Pennyworth. I remember reading at the time that at one stage Timothy Dalton was considered for the part before it went to Irons, who, by the way, is a great Alfred, 10 out of 10. When it came to the casting of Wonder Woman, several actresses were considered, including Elodie Yung, Olga Kurylenko, and Jamie Alexander. That was an easier name to say. But it was Gal Gadot who got the part. She was previously cast as Faora in Man of Steel, but she had to drop out on the account that she was pregnant. Gadot is a joy as Wonder Woman. I find her to be a lot of fun and to have a great superhero presence. So like Ben Affleck, that was a really good casting choice. Batman v Superman also briefly introduces other metahumans who would become the Justice League, including Jason Momoa as Aquaman, Ezra Miller as The Flash, and Ray Fisher as Cyborg. Because now it's all about sequels and cinematic universes, with both DC and Marvel often using their movies to sort of advertise other movies. But yeah, there was clearly a lot of characters crammed into this beast, and we haven't even mentioned Doomsday yet. Number 5. Superhero designs. Superman's suit is given an update this time round. It's a lot brighter with vibrant blues and reds, unlike the costume in Man of Steel, which was really darkened. On the account of Superman saying in the previous movie that his S stands for hope in Krypton, it was decided to take that literal by adding what's meant to be subtle Kryptonian text within the S. The shape of the S this time round is more refined, to looking sharper and being a more traditional shape. I think the Superman suit in Batman v Superman looks terrific, and Henry Cavill looks really comfortable and more confident this time round. As for the Batsuit, the filmmakers wanted to get away from the previous look of having high-tech armor, so instead this time round the suit was made out of cloth. It was said that this Batman's strength should come from his own physicality, rather than gadgets and armory. In other words, he's just a really strong, tough man who puts on a suit and beats up criminals, literally beating the bejesus out of them. I like how the suit looks kind of beaten up. It's like it's been through years of rough scrapes, a contrast to Superman's more pristine suit that looks like a sparkling monument. The Batsuit is also grey this time round, going back to Batman's old school grey look, and the suit was designed to look like the Batsuit from the Dark Knight Returns comic. Batman's battle armor he wears to confront Superman with was also based off the Dark Knight Returns, in a similar scene where Batman wears armor to fight Superman. In fact, it looks near identical. There have actually been a few times in the history of the comics where Batman has fought Superman and has required an armored suit, so the armor totally works and makes sense, with the suit's only weakness being the words Martha. Then of course there's Wonder Woman's costume. I really like it. It captures the look of Wonder Woman while updating it, giving it a warrior look. I just wish the red in her costume was redder, in order to make it stand out more, rather than getting faded. Funny enough, similar to what happened to the Superman suit in Man of Steel, but that would change with later installments. And this time around, her costume has a sort of Spartan warrior skirt, going back to Wonder Woman's original look of having a skirt, before being changed to underpants. All said and done, Batman v Superman may get many things wrong. One thing I think it passes with flying colours is the look of the main three superheroes. Number 4. A live-action Doomsday had been planned since the early 90s. So Batman v Superman brings the fierce and brutal beast creature Doomsday to the big screen for the first time. Warner Brothers had actually been wanting to introduce Doomsday into a live-action movie ever since the early 90s, when the Death of Superman comic was first published. There was of course the Superman Lives project, which was to feature Superman's fateful battle with Doomsday until that movie was scrapped. So showcasing Doomsday was something that had been in the pipeline for a very long time, and was now fully realised. However, I don't really like the way it was executed. When the Doomsday battle happened in the printed page, it took place over a series of comics. It was a big deal, a main event storyline. Here it just feels tacked on at the end, in a story that already feels convoluted, and has way too many plot points as it is. I feel that Superman's battle with Doomsday should be its own entire movie, not just placed at the end of another one. This is, after all, the Death of Superman, a story which deserves to be carefully thought out with a suitable duration time. I also feel like it was way too early to bring Doomsday into this universe's storyline. When Superman died in the comics, we all knew who that Superman was. We grew up with him in the comics, so we felt that impact. Here it happens in the second movie in a series, at a time when we're really just getting to know this Superman. If we had more films featuring Henry Cavill's Superman, then this battle and death definitely would have been more impactful. Once again, rather than just placing it at the end of the second story. Look, I don't know, I don't want to be mean to the movie and complain, but personally, adding the Doomsday element felt sloppy and like an afterthought. It's funny because in the space of a few minutes, it's like the movie goes from being The Dark Knight Returns to the Death of Superman. Personally, I feel that Superman and Batman's conflict should have been its own movie, and the Doomsday battle also should have been its own movie. I don't know if this was studio interference, or if someone in the production was worried that the film wasn't good or was lacking something, so there was this need to literally throw everything into the movie and the kitchen sink. But it is kind of a glorious mess, and it kind of feels like 10 movies crammed into one. Like they really wanted to get up to speed with Marvel, but rather than taking the time to slowly, carefully make a series of movies to introduce all these characters, it's like, no, we're just gonna shove them all into one. You know, just get it over and done with. Also, why would Lex Luthor be championing Batman and Superman to fight when he can just unleash Doomsday? That doesn't make any sense. The funny thing is, in 2007 there was an animated movie based on the death of Superman called Superman Doomsday, and that was actually a more faithful, well thought out adaptation. Batman v Superman also changed the Doomsday origin story. In the original comics, Doomsday was a mysterious force of nature which came from a chamber out of the ground. No one knew who or what he was or where he came from. This made him more mysterious and more frightening. In Batman v Superman, he's some concoction that Lex Luthor put together by using General Zod's dead body or something. Number 3. Filming. Filming of Batman v Superman took place at several locations, including Detroit, Michigan, and Chicago, Illinois, as well as New Mexico. Security was really tight when the shoot started. The production didn't want Henry Cavill, Ben Affleck, and Gal Gadot to be seen in their costumes, and thus have their images leaked to the press. Where according to a website called Hype, whenever those three were on set and in their costumes but weren't doing any filming, they would have to wear wigs and Jedi-looking robes. In fact, a photo was taken of Cavill in his robe holding a lightsaber, which the cast and crew found amusing. Hey, Cavill actually makes a good Jedi. Before filming started, Ben Affleck met up with his predecessor and former Batman Christian Bale, who offered Affleck some advice to make sure they put in a zipper in his bat costume for toilet breaks. So I guess that when it came to that, Bale had a pretty tough time. One thing I find interesting about the shoot is that it started in October 2013 and lasted till late 2014, but the movie didn't actually come out until 2016. What happened? To me, this suggests there were probably issues during post-production, with things having to be changed and re-edited, but that's just a guess. Number 2, Sound of the Heroes. So when it came to scoring Batman v Superman, Hans Zimmer was approached to score the movie, given that he had already previously scored Man of Steel. Zimmer was actually hesitant, as he didn't know how to go about creating a new Batman theme, considering that he had previously scored the Dark Knight trilogy. So to help create a new sound for Batman, he enlisted the services of Dutch composer Junkie XL. Or is that Junkie Extra Large? I don't know, I'll just call him Junkie XL, who previously scored Mad Max Fury Road and would go on to compose Deadpool. The original idea was for Zimmer to focus on the Superman aspects of the score and for Junkie XL to create the Batman parts, but the Batman music did end up being a collaborative effort between the two of them. The two also created a pretty rocking high energy theme for Wonder Woman 2. So they had 3 superhero themes that they had to work with on this movie. That would not have been easy. Given that Zimmer had now scored this movie, as well as Man of Steel and the Dark Knight trilogy, and the Amazing Spider-Man 2, he said that he was done scoring superhero movies. And I guess you can't really blame him. At that stage, he was probably sick to death of superhero movies. Although this wouldn't be the case, as in 2020, he would score Wonder Woman 84. So, yeah, there's that. Number 1, Batman v Superman, Dawn of Outrage. It was all eyes on deck when Batman v Superman was released in March 2016, and its first week was very successful in the box office, so much so it set records. But in its second week, it would have a dramatic drop in numbers, with a historic 81.2% drop. Wowzers. Yep, this release started off with a bang and ended with a whimper. All up, it made $873.6 million on a budget that's estimated to be between $200 to $300 million, and it would become the 7th highest grossing movie of 2016. So it was financially successful, but it definitely did not live up to Warner Brothers' expectations. And oh boy, did the movie get set upon by the fans and critics alike, who really did not like this movie. There were critical complaints that the movie was an incoherent mess and was humorless and just not fun, with the Chicago Tribune calling it a near-total drag. Then there's the fans. Although some fought for the movie and argued that it's a compelling and dramatic superhero movie for a modern age, others just saw it as a terrible movie. I can remember there was just so much hate for this film. Even before its release, people were hating on it. I mean, yeah, Batman v Superman is not a perfect movie and it definitely has its problems and its worthy criticisms, but I don't think it quite deserved all the hate that it actually got. It actually came across as being something that was popular to hate. In fact, there was so much outrage, a special director's cut was released on home media to try and rectify some of the complaints, as mentioned before by Cosplay Chris. Heck, the movie was so bad, it started the sad Affleck meme. A common complaint that I kept hearing over and over again at the time is how Batman and Superman can suddenly put aside their differences and become best friends when they learn that both their mums are called Martha, which I think many people found to be, well, stupid. I think what also didn't help is there was such a long wait between movies, with Man of Steel coming out 3 years earlier in 2013. In that time, Marvel had released 5 movies. Look, I'm not going to trash the movie. I think it has some great moments, I really do. And I think it has some interesting ideas, but it just had a really poor execution, so I'll try to be constructive. To me, it definitely feels like a movie where there were way too many cooks in the kitchen, each of them throwing around their own ideas and insisting that their ideas be put in the movie, creating a convoluted hodgepodge of ideas and storylines and subplots, which drag the movie down and make it too incoherent to make any sense out of it. To simply put it, the movie is a mess. It's as if the movie is just one big ball of movie confetti, with it being a shredded up mess, with each string of paper just not really going anywhere or connecting to the other strings of paper. There needed to be one clear direction, a simple path to follow, and to stick to it. I think it's simple. It's a story of Batman having conflict with Superman and their opposing ideologies. Just leave it at that. There really was no need to overcomplicate it. The movie also feels very miserable. I know that dark themes are often used in superhero movies, but this was just way too morbid, coming across as a moody teenager who has to constantly lecture us about its feelings and how moody it is. Look, there are good things about the movie. It looks great, and it is very well acted, for the most part, and does have many visually grand moments that look iconic. And it does have heart. Okay, it might be a messy, nonsensical heart, but it still has heart nonetheless. So I don't think it's awful, just misguided and unfortunate. With me, what it comes down to is this. When I was a kid, I would have loved to have seen a Batman and Superman movie. That would have been my ultimate dream. But as a kid, if this is what I was given, I honestly would have been disappointed. Once again, it's not a terrible film, and it does have great moments, but it could have been so much more. So much more. I know that many people love this movie, and to some, it's probably their favourite superhero movie. And that's fine. We're all allowed to disagree, and I'm not saying that my opinion is the correct opinion. After all, I love Superman 3, a movie which a lot of people hate. Am I wrong? Are they wrong? No! It's all about tastes. And if a fan of this movie ever came over to me and told me that they love this movie and why they love this movie, I would actually sit down and listen to what they have to say and be open-minded, and take their points on board and probably even give the movie another viewing. Anyway, I'm Minty, and I really hope I haven't annoyed any fans of this film, and if I have, then all I have to say is, Martha! See ya!